Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for jumping on to our first of our quarterly safety group meetings. We appreciate you making safety a priority on your farm and on your operation. We know that you have choices and you can pick other options and choose to manage your farm and ranch operation or your dairy or feed yard however you feel fit. But we appreciate this group making it a priority and working with Colorado Livestock Association and our broker partners. Right quick to throw out a few reminders. Make sure you put your name in the chat box so that we can capture all of your names and put that credit towards you so that you can receive your 2 credits for your operation for this year. And if you're on for the full time, you will get those 2. There is, if I remember right, not an amended version, so please stick with us through the whole thing. If you have any questions during the presentation, stick those in the chat box or in the Q&A function of the Zoom call. We're pretty good at trying to keep on top of those, so we appreciate you being patient if you don't get yours answered right away. If anything else, let's get started. I want to thank our sponsors and our broker partners, of course, Pinnacle Insurance. Joe Newhouse, I believe, is on the call. I think I see him. Yep. Joe is a big part of what we do in Pinnacle as well, and his team. Thank you to Joe. He is the agency lead and in charge of our safety group. Then next is Trent Brewer, who approves all of our safety programming and helps us get those on the docket to provide this helpful information. And then Bart Reese, of course, I don't think Bart is on the call though today, so I won't talk too much badly about him. But Bart helps get people back to work and get things fixed and done so that you can remain insured and that we don't increase that cost of doing business too greatly. And then Daniel Benson, of course, Danny is a huge asset to our team and keeps everybody either in the group or coming back into the group or gets people approved for the group, or basically Daniel is our stopping place for all things making it happen. So we really appreciate their work and their contribution. Then jumping into our broker partners, we have great long-standing relationships with several broker partners. The longest of those is Flood and Peterson. Brian Schiller, I believe, is on the phone. I don't see his mug on the screen other than on the slideshow, so I'll just roll on. Brian and his team over there at Flood and Peterson have been with Colorado Livestock for quite a while, and we appreciate their contributions and their continued sponsorship to the association. Broker partner number 2, Hub. Hub is now represented by Shane Lee. Shane has been here for a little over a year. I don't see him nodding yes or no on the screen, so I'm going to say that I'm somewhere in the right hunt with that one. We really appreciate Shane. Shane comes from an ag background as well, and he has been diving in head first, I would say, to trying to make sure and get out to all of our member partners and explain what it is that we do here with the safety group. So, and then finally, our newest partner, but definitely not our least partner, Renaissance Insurance Group, or RIG, as we've come to affectionately call them here in the office. Eric Ehrlich is on. I heard Ryan Hicks talking earlier in the background. So really glad to have these guys as a part, and they brought quite a bit of flavor and a bunch of new members to the association. So we're very thankful and glad to have them a part. And I see Eric's face. If you want to wave, that should count all of our partners. And we appreciate you guys being with us today, as you are the ones that all make our safety group possible and help us comply with state laws and requirements on workers' compensation, the cheapest and best way affordable. Okay, Britt, next slide. All right, and then there's our team. Yeah, you all know me, Zach Riley, the Chief Executive Officer. We've got Jane Lenwall here. I don't see her face on the screen, but I see her beautiful picture. She's the Director of Administration, and she keeps you billed and keeps you in check and keeps the lights on here at the operation home base here in Aurora. Jessica Lamel is Director of Communications, been with us the longest, somewhere around, I don't know, over a decade at least. Uh, and we're very grateful to have her. She makes sure that you all get the information you need. And then, of course, newest member to our team, Brittany Dennison, and she is our safety group coordinator through us and our liaison to Pinnacle for all things safety, and make sure that your credits are getting turned in and you're not the one calling us at midnight on December the 27th begging to have your credits submitted before the end of the new year, or the old year, I should say. So very happy to have this team, hardest working team in the biz. We do a lot with a little bit, and everybody wears a different hat at any given moment in the day. So next. All right, jumping right into the core of everything. I want to cruise over here to the rural fire mitigation part, fire safety and prevention discussion by Russ Kane. He is the fire chief for the Gailton Fire Protection District. Russ has been a fire chief of the Gailton Fire Protection District in Weld County since April of 2018. He is a Colorado transplant, much like most of ourselves on here. Chief Kane has lived and served in the fire service in New Jersey, Nevada, and California, as well as deployments across the American West and public agencies with the Union Pacific Railroad since 1981. Russ grew up on his grandparents' farm in central New Jersey and is an Aggie. He graduated from an original land-grant college, Cook College, Rutgers University. He moved to Colorado from Nevada in 2016 to marry his wife, Lizzie, who he met his freshman year at Rutgers in 1984 and reconnected online. He is also a certified chief fire officer and certified wildfire mitigation specialist. He and his family embrace and love Western living, fishing, hunting, winter sports, and of course, rodeo and agriculture. So, Russ, thank you, sir. Chief Kane, I should say. We appreciate you being a part of our call today, and we appreciate the information that I'm sure will be robust that you are presenting us with today.
Thank you. Russ is just fine. So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to share here. Right here. I'm trying to. Give me just a second here for. How's that? Can you see my slide? Rural
I can't see anything quite yet.
Not yet. How about now?
Nothing yet.
Nope, we see the back of your palm.
Okay. So I'm gonna put that back up.
Yeah.
Let me try this.
And if you try the share screen option below your picture, that might help. There, I don't know if we still had it up from earlier.
Yeah, that unfortunately the view's not coming up. We just had it. We just fixed this.
I know.
Right, hang on for a second.
You're good.
How about now?
Nothing yet. Oh, there we go. If you want to move it into slideshow presentation mode, we are seeing your design portion currently.
How about now?
Yep, there we go. We are good to go.
Okay.
Oh,
nope, turn it off.
Pop back out.
We'll do it again.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for having me this afternoon.
Russ, it popped back out of presentation mode.
It did.
If you want to, if you're more than welcome to move through your slides on this portion as well, if you want.
Okay. Try something. Let me just see we'll try new share.
Perfect.
How about that?
There we go. You're rocking and rolling. We're on slide
All
2.
right, here we go. All right. Thanks for having me. That's a picture of our little group out of Galton. We have probably about twice, 3 times as many folks, but we took a shot there for so many reasons. We are a rural organization, and we are the starting point for a lot of firefighters in this area, as a lot of the other fire departments west of 85 closed down the doors to volunteers. We have them wide open, and a lot of folks have come up on board because of it. So a little bit about my background. You see that roof lines, then the right-hand side there, that's the fields that I used to bale straw in as a kid for my neighbors. My family farm is now 250 homes, and it's just a distant memory now. But went to Rutgers University, Cook College, the Ag School, for environmental planning and design. I've been in the fire service since 1981, starting in a small volunteer fire department that is now a larger career department. Served in multiple states across the New Jersey and the West, and recently have become a certified wildland fire mitigation specialist. I had spent probably the most significant contributor to that is I had spent 10 years associated with the state of California, 8 years as an employee for CAL FIRE, and had responded to some of the fires that you see on TV and things like that. So I kind of experienced that firsthand. The challenges of any rural fire service, the further you get out of town, we're going to have limited staffing, hauled water, long distances to travel before we get to you, our road conditions, which will slow us down. And then oftentimes we have a remote or delayed discovery of a fire, whether it be a hay fire or it be a wildland fire or even a structure fire, because neighbors are far and few between the more we get out of town. We take a look at our wildland risk, and we take a look at our average precipitation. Now, if you were to ask somebody on the Front Range what our average precipitation is, I don't know if they would be able to say 10 to 15 over here in our country, because it's just not it's not in their face, because we have good irrigation and a good water supply from the mountains. However, it's ready to burn most times of the year. Yesterday we had red flag conditions. Today we have snow and ice, and it's just kind of high plains and Front Range living. If we take a look at fire, these lithographs are about 150 years old. Fire has always been part of the plains, been part of the natural process. It's part of the Native American process, and our grasses are ready to burn most times during the year. As you can see from prehistoric times, somebody tried to represent that there as evidence in the archaeological record. So fires on the Front Range and the high plains have always been a challenge. Whether that's magnified by current conditions or not is a matter of debate. But on any given day, within an hour or two, our grass can become ready to burn. What deceives us is our generous irrigation that was brought to us, especially where we have it, and then as we extend out into the dry land, of course, it's not as obvious, but we don't have as many roof lines in the dry land either. And then we end up with the situation we had a couple years ago with the Marshall Fire, a fast-moving grass fire into clustered development, house-to-house transfer of fire. And that could just as easily happen with a ranch or a farm complex, and it's things we need to guard against. Essentially, when it comes down to protecting your home, your ranch, your facility, it comes down to housekeeping within 100 feet of those exposed buildings and agricultural equipment that you may put out in the yard. And whether you run a disc line around them or good mowing, this is called defensible space. The key is to keep the clutter out of the places where it can transmit to the structure. And whether that's firewood in a home, or that's a deck, or that is bushes and tumbleweeds up against a barn or a back lot, those are all the same things. This is always put into a residential context, but we can put it into a farm or an agricultural context just as easy. And you can see that, and these are readily available online through a variety of agencies. Just search defensible space and you'll see 100 pictures like this with advice on how to keep those materials down. Also, the building's inherent construction features come into play when it comes to fire transmission. Some things catch and propagate embers better than others. There's an organization called IBHS, and if you search them, they'll have a lot of videos on how wildland fires are spread amongst homes. And so it's a great primer on preparing your property and knowing the enemy, if you will. In Colorado, we have an ag burn exception for very good purposes. And as you can see, the folks up top have a water source nearby. They're burning into the wind, and they've notified their fire department, and they have green all around them. And we're challenged by this. Most of our farmers and ranchers are really good at this. It's our hobby farms or small residential lots that are not as good at this, and they often lose fires. Our ditch companies have become exceptional with regards to their fire safety and getting the job done even in high risk days. And so that agricultural open burning comes from the air side of the regulations. Some fire districts, it depends on where you're at, may have an additional set of regulations that handle the fire safety side. A lot of these state regulations have been designated to the county. A residential burn permit or a non-ag burn permit is limited to an 8x8 cube of fire, and it has to be all natural materials. So you can't burn garbage, and even dimensional lumber is discouraged. So, and that becomes an air control issue, an air pollution control issue. And our fire district, for example, does not have specific regulations on when you can burn or how you can burn, but we will put your fire out if it's unattended. If it's attended, we can have a conversation about your safety. That's not a problem for us at all. And we understand that fire is a part of the landscape, and fire is part of the tool set in the farms and ranches in our areas. We would ask, however, that during red flag warnings of high fire danger, what that means is that the fire will be likely unable for us to contain it, even if we had good resources at the scene. So it can outrun a fire crew. And that's why we're so concerned about it, because of the wind and the humidity combination. And usually that's humidity is below 20% for 3 hours in a row. So you're burned, and the problem we get is like we had today, but the reverse of it. We had a storm front move in. A lot of people want to get their burning done before the storm front, and that's a good thing to do. And hoping the moisture will take care of it. One of the challenges is the winds that come up before the storm front, and oftentimes will blow a fire out of a ditch or reignite a fire you may have thought was out. Hay fires. We have several of these a year. We have some root causes. We have contact with hot exhaust. We'll have wet hay, ventilation and spacing. Monitor your piles for heat and break them down when you start seeing it. Move them out away from the other stacks. Spacing to prevent spread if we do get one going. We'll have use smaller stacks, wider aisles, and we really, when we get there, it's not our hoses that put the fire out. More often than not, it's your loaders. I noticed the spars were logged in, and they're good partners on the handful of fires that we've had in the area. We oftentimes borrow loaders from other farms and ranches as well. It's a community effort when we have one of these. And our objective is to keep the fire from spreading to first the structures and then the balance of your feedstocks. And oftentimes we'll let that pile burn because there's not enough water to put it out. It's just quicker to let it burn because it never goes completely out. That fire that you see depicted there, the area that we let burn took a week to burn down. We patrolled it, and so did the dairy personnel. Hay grinding is, we get some fires due to hay grinding. try to do that away from your other piles of storage. I know it's a dance for space, but what well-maintained equipment is something that it was always going to help us prevent from throwing a bearing, except and things like that. But that does happen. Dusting your equipment off, it'll keep that fire from propagating. Once it gets into the dust, into the nooks and crannies inside of your rig, and you might be able to put it out with a fire extinguisher instead of that painful wait for us to get there. We're pretty quick because we're staff stations, but it's still sometimes a long way out. Give 2 hours after you've done this, after you've done a grinding batch, to check for fire. And if you need us to come out, when you're in our jurisdiction, we'll come out. We could use our thermal imager to help you look for spots. Have a loader and water nearby for a quick action. Call the fire department simultaneously so we can all get there together. And if we have to go home, that's just fine. Have a fire extinguisher handy, a water hose, water truck, whatever your flavor is. The fire extinguisher will help you with the equipment more than the water will. And having a variety of extinguishing agents is always a good thing. We live amongst gas and oil. It's a huge benefactor for us here out in Gailton, but we do have well strikes that happen usually during the plowing season or planting season. And the site pads often provide us great fire breaks, and the 2 tracks that go out to them. And we've used those as anchor points and tactical resources. Those batteries typically don't receive fire or propagate fire very well. The sparks will go right out when they bounce off them. Or if you do get one, it won't move from there because it doesn't throw embers. Well, one thing we have to be cautious of is that we work in an environment of odorless methane. When we're used to turning on the propane, or if we're in town, the gas will get a smell. And we don't get that out here. That's pure methane doesn't have any type of scenting for safety purpose yet, until it's cleaned up at the refinery. Hydrogen sulfide is also a poisonous gas in some areas. Usually those areas are well signed and placarded. And there isn't rotten egg smell that you will get from that. And if it's on fire or you strike it, call 911 and your oil contact. Usually there's a sign with an oil emergency contact not too far away from those valves. This is not really a ranching issue, more of a farm or a hobby issue. We have probably about a half a dozen heat lamp fires a year. It's usually related to housekeeping and maintenance, and some people will buy a cheaper heat lamp, there's a big difference between a $9 heat lamp and a $35 heat lamp. You want to make sure you have a good thermostat on it, and all of the components can take the heat. A lot of the heat lamp folks, the problems we have with heat lamps are because people buy an actual lamp and put a heat lamp bulb in it. And a lamp with a clamp with a plastic socket will often melt down under the temperatures that are being generated. You have to have them secure, clear, good grates and guards around them. Housekeeping, keep them dusted. Wiring and circuits, and this is a common theme as we build out our electrical systems on our farms and ranches. Sometimes we don't have electricians do it. Sometimes we overload it. Sometimes we build it with no intention to overload it, and somebody down the line comes and overloads it accidentally. And these things, in presence of all the combustibles that are around, can make a problem for us. So buy good quality equipment for your chickens and things like that. There are things called heat panels or brooder panels. You could buy those, and they're much safer than the lamps. They have tip switches. There's lots of alternatives to the red heat lamp. Then be ready. It's like you said, it's even in the most prepared circumstances, it still might be a little bit of a delay. It takes 2 to 3 minutes at the radio center to handle a call, and then it takes anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes for us to respond. So have a working phone and know where you are. Have a loader and a hose line nearby. Buckets, if you don't have hose line, have buckets of water, shovels, forks, and a grubbing tool. And if you take on a fire, make sure you're in the black. That's the safest spot. Don't get out in front of it. Fire extinguishers, 10-pound ABC, recommend having one handy, bigger if you got it. Backpack pumps, that's a cheaper version, 5 gallons of water on a backpack can knock a wildland fire down pretty well. On-site tanks, tenders, and pumps, some of the bigger dairies have them for us, and some of the ranches have them. Connections, make sure you can connect to your water source. It's no good if you can't make the hoses match. Good fire department access and address signs. We provide address signs with 4-inch lettering for anybody who asks, and we've been trying to get the whole community. We have 894 residences, and I think we have 400 signed already. So, and be present for your planned burns. Even if you've got a long stretch of fence, make sure you're in an ATV or pickup where you can get to it if something gets out of control. Housekeeping is usually center to both wildland fire spreading to your property, or actually having an event that comes from your property out. Cobwebs and dust accumulation, equipment maintenance, access and egress. And if these guys love it, the picker's there, it's time to clean up a little bit. What fuels and solvents, we see when people hit their burn piles, and they'll start off with gasoline because we see a big mushroom cloud go up and it's always black. You don't probably need that much. And you can start it on the leeward side and let it burn through with the wind. It'll move along good enough. Most of that gasoline flashes off. Be careful with these solvents and fuels as they like to go down low and sneak up on you, and you could actually light the area around you. So just make sure you use approved containers and cans. That's a big help. And grounding and bonding, ideally you want to touch the surfaces of your containers if they're metal so that they touch the receiver so you don't have a difference in charge. And you want to make sure you're away from ignition sources. Something as simple as mobile phones are pretty resilient with regards to being an ignition source, but other types of electronic devices you got to be careful with. I want to let your motors cool, good ventilation, and if you have a parts washer, make sure you have a UL approved part washer with a thermal cover that falls down if there's fire. In electrical, again, we see this a little bit of overloading, size of the wire, open boxes, circuit should match the tool, clearances and covers, overhead wires versus equipment. We see a lot of power drops you could hang up on a backhoe or a larger tractor. Quality, the connections and extensions, and age comes into fact there too. I grew up in a house with fuses. We didn't put pennies behind the fuses, but we did use fuses that were too big. So that we never had an incident, but we could have. Lightning protection systems on your metal buildings and bins, and also your wooden buildings. Anything up high, we have direct hits on hay piles sometimes, and I'm not sure how you protect the hay pile, but the buildings we should protect. And this is some of the resources that we use to put this together. Is there any questions? Hello?
I am looking in the chat.
Same, I'm in the Q&A.
Perfect. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or Q&A function here. We'll wait just a minute or so to give you time.
Russ, while you're waiting, I have a quick question for you. How do you see what do you see as the most likely impacts to people, to the human part of this equation? In other words, where are the greatest safety risks as far as you're concerned to humans?
Are you looking at a wildfire context or a residential context?
Well, we'd probably be more likely to see it in a residential context. However, I think it's present and on farms and ranches also. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I would say people are most at risk when they're sleeping, And some of the ways, of course, with residential fire protection, to have good working smoke detectors in order. And I know you got a chirper out there, and it's at 3 a.m, nobody likes that, and then we forget to replace it. So just keeping your smoke detectors. The other thing is shutting your doors at night. We keep our doors open for lots of reasons, maybe to hear an infant cry or maybe to let pets move about. But that is probably the single most important thing you can do after smoke detectors, is to keep your doors closed at night. Fire will not propagate for a period of an hour through some doors. And so that buys you critical time. And if you can't escape the primary escape, you may be able to go out the window, or at least summons help when the fire department gets there, but you'll be alive to do it. You won't be overcome with smoke and heat. The third thing that's been introduced recently is lithium-ion batteries. Now, you've probably been reading about them in a larger context with scooters and things like that, but that an overcharge or a cheap and dying battery, however the battery gets to that situation, charging them on combustible surfaces, they have an amazing speed at igniting the room and making the situation untenable for folks. So don't charge your devices while you sleep. I mean, I charge my phone by my bed because it helps me alert for my job. But that's probably not a great habit. Your phones are pretty resilient, but as the bigger you go up, the harder, the more potential that has for an ignition source. Computers, don't let them overheat. Don't put them in the couch to charge. And I know it's hard with the kids are typically, I have a 21 and a 26-year-old. 21-year-old still living at home, but when we went through their teenage years, they left their devices everywhere. And so that is a credible ignition source, and increasingly more. If you read the news from New York City, where kind of all the numbers are always magnified, but they're really at odds with their great electronic conversion that they want everybody to go to lithium ion. But there's this genuine safety issue, especially when we stack people up in big buildings with these ignition sources. They're very robust as far as an ignition source. So tend to your electronics, take them off the charge at night if you can. And if you want to charge them, maybe have an area outside or in a metallic container that is resistant to fire. Because I'm thinking of ways to do it at home too. So that's a new thing that's been introduced to us, and we don't have a fix for that other than prevention. So those are some of the three things I see as far as human impact goes. With regards to wildland fire, you can really make yourself resilient to wildland fire with good housekeeping out to that 100 feet. I can tell you that I've rode into many families in California who had rode out the fire waiting for us, just sitting in their yard and in their home. And because they had good defensible space, their evacuation routes were cut off. But they were able to ride it out because they had good defensible space. And like I said, there's lots of resources on how to prepare your space, what the zones are, and what to look for out there. And of course, if you need help with anything, you can certainly. So,
Chief King?
Yeah, I see. There's a question from Anna Spar, and so you want 100 feet around barns, hay, and equipment. It's not what I want. It's what's been shown to be effective. We all know we have to. And that doesn't mean it has to go down to mineral soil either. We just need to keep accumulation of flammable materials away from there. So if it's just an implement and it doesn't have any flammables, many flammables associated, I know many of them have tires. It's what's effective. So and it's been what's shown to be effective and studied for the last 20 years to be effective. So ideally, yes, if you can get 30. So it's all relative to what you can do. So.
We've got one more in the Q&A, Chief King. When burning ditches, power poles are often a concern. Are we liable if a power pole catches fire while burning a ditch?
Well, I'm not an attorney, but I have spoke with folks who have went through that process, and they say that's what we're insured for. And I think that's a little cavalier. The one thing I have noticed is Excel calls us They have a monitoring center in Texas that monitors the scanners for wildfire threat. And every once in a while we get called for a smoking pole, and they'll call us, and we have to explain to them that ditch burning is a part of our practice out here. And, you know, oftentimes we'll get a smoking pole afterwards. And so we'll put it out or call them if the pole's, you know, compromised. And they'll ask about the wildfire in the area. And so there's a concern there from Xcel or whoever whether it's Poudre REA or Xcel, that they'll, that they want their poles up and upright and in good order, but I don't know who's liable really for doing that. I'm not sure where your exemptions are and things like that, because I'm not an attorney. I'll ask our attorney.
Thank you, sir.
Chief Kane, one more question for you. When would it be good to use a foam type of fire extinguisher? Tractors, oil storage, and such.
Well, that's interesting. I say that's interesting because recently the concerns around foam have changed. I know that there's a couple Class A foams out there, and Class A foams won't hurt if you try to put it on a burning tractor. Now the fuel is different. That is going to require a Class B foam, and that is usually a 2.5 gallon extinguisher, which you would say that's an extinguisher, is probably not going to be enough for a large fuel spill. But you will be able to knock down fire with it. There's multiple agents being marketed out there right now. Some are really good, some are snake oil, and they will knock down a fire and enhance your water stream to do a better job at it. And you have, for example, some of you might have seen the K-rated extinguishers, which is a water-based extinguishing agent for grease fires in a kitchen. And so you'll see those in kitchens. So be careful what you buy. Make sure it's rated for what you want to do. Class A combustible. A large part of your equipment is Class A combustible, plastics, rubber, etc. But then there's a fair part that's Class B, which is flammable liquids or combustible liquids. And so that would require a B-rated extinguisher. So an ABC extinguisher is a good catch-all extinguisher. It doesn't keep stuff wet for long. A Class A extinguisher, a foam Class A extinguisher is a good, the rating on the side, alpha, A, B, and C. And C is for energized electrical equipment. If you turn off the electrical equipment and you know it's off, then it becomes an A fire. So it's a little different.
Thank you so much.
Right. I'm not seeing any more questions. So appreciate your time, Chief Kane, and appreciate you providing us with this valuable information. And we will, of course, have access to you for, I hope, future questions if somebody comes in with something later.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you joining us. Appreciate your passion for the industry and trying to keep it viable and at least not burnt. So, Brittany, are we ready to go to the next topic?
We are indeed.
All right. Thank you again, Chief Kane. Our next presenter today is I tried to make you Dr. Dan. Dan Friesen. He is with the Colorado Department of Agriculture and is the emergency coordinator for the CDA. He leads the emergency management and critical infrastructure protections program for CDA's 8 divisions. Dan is also the primary emergency support function and natural resources person for the state of Colorado. Dan has been working in emergency management and disaster response since the 2013 Colorado floods. He's a retired law enforcement officer with 24 years of service, and he is a qualified liaison officer on the Eastern Colorado Incident Management Team. Dan is a proud graduate of CSU, and he is a Colorado Certified Emergency Manager. He recently completed FEMA's National Emergency Management Advanced Academy. That is a mouthful, Dan. And he lives in Weld County. He and his wife and 2 children enjoy their time there camping and multiple movie nights. Dan, as always, pleasure to have you. Appreciate you joining us again. The information that you and your department bring is invaluable, and we appreciate your service to your community and the industry as well. I'll throw it over to you.
Chief Kane and I are neighbors, and I'd like to think good friends, and we always like to come and talk to our ag folks. So thanks for having us. Let me make sure my technology works. How's that?
Looks right on our answer.
Perfect. So this is just going to be a really nice review. And as an emergency manager, I always have to kind of show up and apologize. I'm going to talk about all hazardous disasters, animal disease, all the things that are just your worst day, right? The gray skies, black skies. There's really nothing nice that I come and talk to you about, especially when we're talking about preparedness. So, but this should be a nice review. We have one reference that we pretty much use as a standard across the state and even across the region, and I'll kind of explain that. But and I want to thank my partners, the emergency managers at Weld County and Yuma County. They helped put this together too. We've been taking this out on the road to various ag forums and groups just to talk about, you know, how to prep the farm, how to prep livestock for all different types of disasters. We won't, if we have some time, we can talk about severe winter storms at the end, but we'll just speak in generalities. So I'm Dan Fraser. I'm an agriculture emergency coordinator. Right now, it's just a team of one here for emergency management, but I'll kind of explain our force multipliers that are out in the field and here at the office. That's my email and my phone. Don't hesitate to call. We want to support the ag associations, farmers, ranchers, and producers as best we can now that we have this program up and running. So just talk about CDA real quick, Colorado Department of Ag. That's our new logo with our values. I really like it, so I throw that in a lot of these. But the partnership piece is huge, right? We want to partner with you, and I feel like I'm already a partner with CLA and CCA and you know, the poultry groups and everything else, just because of all the things that we've gone through in the last couple of years. So this is kind of the structure of the Colorado Department of Ag. We have 8 divisions. We work under a commissioner. Emergency management, my office lives under the state veterinarian, so in the animal health division, but I essentially report to the commissioner, deputy commissioner, along with the state vet, and I serve all of these divisions. So I'll help the state fair with prep. We'll go out and work with plant industry on plant disease response plans. We've done some critical infrastructure protection stuff with our lab services division because we have quite a robust 3 different labs here at the campus down in Broomfield. And then some of the other groups like brands, just getting them prepped. The brand inspectors are really great field, you know, our eyes and ears and field responders that can help us. We have a lot of different plant inspection folks, and then inspection and consumer services has a lot of inspection folks when it comes to produce safety and other things. So there's a lot of folks out there from CDA. I think we're at like 400 strong employees now. And then in that group, what we've done is built an emergency management support team. So I was able to steal 22 employees from all 8 of the divisions, and they meet with me bi-monthly, and we talk everything emergency management. So again, I have to apologize to them. You know, let's talk worst day. Let's talk about preparedness, response, and recovery. But we designed this emergency management program in October of 2022 is when I started. I came on board. I was formerly the emergency manager for the city of Greeley, and then obviously had a law enforcement career before that. But in October of 2022, they brought me on board, and I consolidated a bunch of different programs that we had in different divisions. We had a food recovery program that was left over from COVID. We had some drought and water things that we need to look at. We have a continuity plan so we can keep the state agency or the department running if we get hit with disaster. So I was able to bring all that together and kind of build a strategy. And then they let me incorporate this EMST into it, the emergency management support team. And so I have those 22 staff members in the 8 divisions that can help. I am the full-time emergency manager. I was initially hired for all hazards, but we've with highly pathogenic avian influenza, I quickly learned that I was going to be in foreign animal disease response as well. And now we're prepping for all of those things that might come for our livestock. Yeah, as I put on here, we have the continuity plan. we wanted to make sure our department had a really good continuity plan before we went out to farms, ranches, and ag businesses and some of our larger producers and said, hey, what does your continuity plan look like? And can we help you with your continuity plan? Because ag business continuity is really just vital to rural community vitality and our state and national economy. So other state plans that I kind of assist with is we have an integrated preparedness plan. That's a training and exercise plan statewide. We have our enhanced state hazard mitigation plan that I help put together with our Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management at the state level. That's a plan that looks at all of the threats in the state, from cyber attacks to what's our wildland fire threat. And then we have our state Homeland Security strategy. I try to get as many acronyms on this slide as I possibly could, just to show you that emergency management is much like the military and law enforcement and the fire service. We just flood things with acronyms. I do sit at the State Emergency Operations Center. ESF 11 is a desk for agriculture and natural resources. I'm the lead there. And what we've been doing with some interns that we get from CSU's vet school, we're building a playbook for every type of disaster, from floods, fires, tornadoes, severe winter weather, hazardous materials. What we're doing is we're building a playbook for animal health and welfare, and making sure that we really address the needs of farmers, ranchers, and the animals that you guys are tending to. And no matter who sits at that desk at the State Emergency Operations Center, they can break this thing out, and there'll be hints, essentially. It's a playbook. Again, you know, first 3 hours we need to do this. The next 6 hours we got to consider that. As we get into operational periods, if they're 12-hour operational periods, you know, going into like a week long, what are our concerns for our livestock, our horses, those kind of things. So those are things. We're also building it for our plant response, you know, threats to crops, those kind of things. So it's a work in progress, and I'm supposed to get a couple more CSU vet interns this summer, and they'll help with that, and we'll hopefully have a good rough draft by the end of the summer. Really, my job is to connect dots, move resources around from one part of the state to the other. So I really track the community animal response teams, make sure I know what Northeast region has, what Northwest region has, what the Denver metro area has, and if we need to move things around, if it's just neighbors helping neighbors far east, and we need to get some government teams or some nonprofit teams out there to help evacuate animals, transport animals, shelter animals, feed animals, whatever, we look at that. CSU Extension, we're really closely with them and our local emergency managers to try to have all these plans in place. And then the Division of Homeland Security has a field operations section with field managers out there. They call me if they see an impact, if there's a fire brewing, if there's a severe winter storm and the trucks aren't running, and we've got, you know, calves stuck somewhere. They give me a call and say, hey, we might have some agricultural impacts from this storm or this disaster that's brewing. So there's a lot of good communication at the state level, along with our local partners. So when we talk preparedness, I think we have to talk about the individual and the family. And, you know, when I say family, it could be your employees working on your farm or ranch. But let's just kind of address that. The best part of preparedness, in my opinion, is being notified and having knowledge. The old G.I. Joe, knowledge is half the battle, knowledge is power. I think if you don't know that something's coming or something's brewing, you're already behind the 8 ball, right? So there's all these different alerting systems that you can register for in the various counties. I know in Weld County, it's called Code Red. In the Denver metro area, the Broomfield and Jefferson County, it's called Smart 911. Some of the eastern counties have Everbridge. You just kind of have to get on your sheriff's office webpage or your local emergency management county webpage, and they'll tell you what you need to register. And if you can throw an email in there and a cell phone, a landline if you still have it, so that they can alert you when something's coming your way. And these could be weather alerts, it could be law enforcement activity in the area, hazmat spills, you know, anything that they consider a disaster that they need to get public notification and warning out on. There are those systems like iPause and WIA and the emergency alert systems through your TV. iPause will break into your cell phone and give you disaster updates. All that takes time, and maybe the phone isn't working, maybe it is. So yeah, anything that you can do to be better prepared to receive the emergency notifications, we're all for that. And be informed, be prepared. There's going to be a theme through this presentation, and I think we all know it, especially in ag, is let's not rely on the government. Public safety, emergency management is going to be overwhelmed if we have a regional disaster, and there's going to be slower responses. So we really emphasize find your friends, find your neighbors, find the other ranches and farmers nearby, and get on the same page way before anything bad is coming your way. So, you know, you'll look on this, who do you know and who can help? I didn't really put the government on here. You know, you've got folks at church, we've got nonprofit groups, we've got the other industry folks near you. So really consider that, having a good plan ahead of time for your family. And then we'll talk about, you know, the farm and the livestock in a minute here. Communications or meetup plans are very popular right now. You know, having somebody out of your area that all your family members, all your employees, you know, whoever you need to, anybody in your circle can call so that you know that everybody's okay, or even just a meetup location, you know, everybody meet at grandma's type thing. So that's that out of town contact or out of the disaster area type thing. And then we always say review all this stuff with your family, at least annually. Let them know what the master plan is, and if that's what your employees, do that as well. 72-hour emergency kits, go bags. There's all kinds of names for them, but you know, as long as you got some food and water, some contact lists, your important documents, maybe it's photocopies of things, medications for you and your people, cell phone, but definitely take the charger, and batteries for things that might run on batteries. You know, a lot of things are done on a cell phone now, so definitely have a couple chargers, right? Just to be prepared. But these are kind of the personal and family preparedness tips that are out there. Now, the reference material I mentioned that we use for farms and ranches across Colorado and really across the region is this. It's called the All Hazards Preparedness for Rural Communities Guide. And it comes out of the Center for Food Security and Public Health, which is essentially Iowa State University and Iowa State University Extension, the big ag school in Iowa. They put together a really good manual. It comes in a hard copy. The ones that we have at CDA, they forgot to print the wildfire section of it. So look for version 3 that has wildfire, and that's pretty important to Colorado, as Chief Kane just mentioned. But you can also download it right now off their webpage at prepforagthreats.org. And again, it's Iowa State University's booklet. It's endorsed by an organization called NASEP, or the National Alliance of State Animal and Agricultural Emergency Programs, which CDA here we're a member of, and our regional group, the Multi-State Partnership for Security in Agriculture, or what we like to call the MSP. We did also use some grant money recently. I believe it was the state of Minnesota had some extra funds at the end of last year, and they have translated this entire document into Spanish. So there's a Spanish version online that you can download that PDF as well. So that's kind of the reference material that we're using at the local level and the state level across the state when we talk about preparedness for farms and ranches. And again, here's all the folks that endorse it. What I like about NASEP, or what I call NASA, because I always wanted to be an astronaut, it says our mission is to protect the entire family. So they're really pulling your animals into this. And we know folks typically won't evacuate anymore without their animals, large and small. So we're really preparing for that. So when it comes to a farm plan, and you know, I'm taking these right out of the sections of this document. So if you get a chance, go to that prepforagthreats.org and download a copy of this. But farm emergency preparedness plan, and a plan should be written down, at least typed up, right? Somewhere where you can review it, update it, that kind of thing. Some of these pictures are local, you know, from tornadoes here locally. Some are, you know, floods in North Carolina, or our friends in Wyoming. But, you know, disasters are going to strike, and these all hazards disasters, floods, fires, tornadoes, that kind of thing, they're happening more and more. So farm emergency preparedness plan. Why do we want to do it, right? Let's minimize the impacts if we can. Let's get ahead of this. Let's have it in our mind that it's going to happen someday. We don't know how big, but we're going to be as prepared as possible. We want to respond better. You're a little less stressed if you have some type of plan rather than no plan at all. And then we definitely want to speed up the recovery process. If you're an ag business, and I'll talk specifically about agricultural businesses in a little bit here, But if you're an ag business, we want you up and running as quick as possible. We don't want your processes interrupted for too long. If you lose some livestock, you know, how do we get you back up? How do we get new livestock to you? You know, all these things, very important because you're extremely important to the state economy and the national economy. But before a disaster, what do we want to think about? We want to create a site map if we can, with the equipment, the hazards that you have that you've identified on your property, shutoffs for power and gas, escape routes, barriers, where do you keep your animals most of the time, where are water and feed locations that could be affected in disaster. And again, we're thinking all types of disasters. And you can look at your local hazard mitigation plan. If you pull up, again, your county website, sheriff's office or emergency management office, they should have that published, or if you contact them, they can get you a copy of either the county or regional hazard mitigation plan. These are super great plans to have and know because they list out what the main disasters are for your area. And that these plans are put together with what we call the whole community perspective. So they bring stakeholders in from not just first response, you know, public safety, but they call in farmers, they call in business owners, and they ask them, what do you guys think as well? So those hazard mitigation plans are what most emergency response and operations planners are based on. Learn about your warning systems. We kind of hit that in the family section. Know what your county's using. Please register. Some of them even have like a special needs registry or an access and functional needs registry. If you have folks that might need a little extra help, you have some elderly folks, you know, anybody with challenges, sometimes you can put that in there and then your first responders know. Some areas don't have that, and there's political and other reasons why, but those are some options out there. Emergency contact lists are super important. Your trusted veterinarian, if you have animals, your CSU extension folks, your local emergency manager, your insurance agent, you know, neighbors with other capabilities that can help you. You know, the chief talked about other farms and ranches that might bring over equipment if there's a fire, help out. And then suppliers, your supply chain. Are there any single points of failure? Do you have a fuel plan for your generators? Say the power goes out for a while, you're stuck on generators. Do you know who's going to bring you the diesel or the gas for that? You know, we even have to consider that here at the state. And I've been working with the Colorado Department of Transportation to create a fuel contingency plan for both our state agencies. Where are we going to get it? We're going to have to get it from outside the region, and we're probably have to get it from smaller, you know, vendors, not the big companies, because everybody's going to be vying for fuel if there's a fuel shortage or some type of disaster that affects the fuel supply. Here's a contact form, kind of a fill in the blank page from the guidebook, the Prep for Ag Threats guidebook. You know, if you just have business cards that you can staple to something, we joke in emergency management, you never want to exchange business cards the day of the disaster. Try to get these way before. You know, this is in that preparedness phase. Your associations, obviously. We had some winter storm response stuff that we did when I first came on board in 2022 for Sedgwick County. And it was one of the associations that was able to help. There weren't government resources. It was just associations finding members that could help other members out. And that's really a part of my position as well, is connecting the dots when there's that kind of thing. Who are your vendors and who works in local government? Who's your sheriff? Who's your local emergency manager? Who's running the fire department and the ambulance? Again, with farm emergency preparedness, the planning before disaster. Do you know what your insurance will cover? You know, have you talked to the Farm Service Agency about the programs that they have? That really in the state of Colorado is the only relief and recovery that we have right now. So have a good relationship with USDA, FDA, FSA, have a good relationship with your insurance agent. Have you identified relocation areas? If you need to go to higher ground, can you? Or do things need to be locked down? You know, like agrochemicals. We think about disasters, but we also got to think about security. There's some bad actors out there. There's activists, there's terrorists, there's criminals. So we have to kind of think from all sides of this. If you prefer, how to prepare family and farm employees, are you reviewing the plans with them? Are you thinking business continuity? Have you discussed whether you should shelter in place for certain disasters or evacuate? Usually the government will give you some type of recommendation, but you know your place best. You know your people best. And have you established some type of communications plan with your family, your employees, your neighbors? You know, is there a phone tree? Do you have and I hate to say this, you know, like a chat system or a shared text? I mean, all those things kind of make me cringe, but when you need to communicate, you do need to communicate. Have you stockpiled any type of supplies needed to protect your farm? Are you close to a river? A sandbag's a good idea. Do you have enough wire and rope and lumber if you need to put something together quick? And, as the chief mentioned, fire extinguishers, what kind do you have? You know, are they going to help you with the types of fires you could possibly have? Extra fuel, extra feed. And as I'm trying to push around here at CDA, do we have enough generators? Because the power is going to go out, the grid someday is going to go out, and we're going to be left running generators for a bit. So are you an agricultural business? Are you a business that has processes? Do you know what you got to keep? I mean, what's the absolute critical process that you need to keep going and running for your business? How do you keep your business open? Do you have a supplier list? Do you have backup suppliers? Can you call in extra staff if you need them to clear debris, fix things, and get the business back going? Do you have an alternate work location or storage locations for a temporary time or even longer? And then alternate communication methods. You know, can you communicate with your customers, your employees, your partners in various different ways, right? Maybe the phones are down, so you can get some kind of access to the internet, or, you know, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just driving over and talking to folks. And do you have a succession plan for the management of your ag business? You know, if you're the president and you go down, who's coming in? Who's your vice president? Who's the vice president's vice president? The deputy to the assistant's deputy is what we joke about sometimes. And then do your employees and your succession plan know that they're a part of this? I put together a continuity plan for all the departments here and succession plans for all the divisions. And, I have to sometimes call these folks up and say, hey, the director just said you're the deputy director. You're going to be third in line in case something happens. And where are your most important documents, your critical documents? Are they paper? Are they electronic? Have you backed them up? I mean, in this age of people hacking and cyber issues, you know, do you have it on an external drive? Do you have paper if you need paper? Trying to explain to folks around here, you might want to have some old, carbon forms and some old things that we can fill out and fax if we need to, in case the computers go down for too long. This animal health part, the state veterinarian likes me to always say, have a trusted veterinarian and rely on them. More veterinarians these days are talking about this kind of stuff, how to prepare for disasters and bad days. But we really want to prevent disease outbreaks, keep animals as healthy as possible, even if it isn't an all hazardous disaster like a flood and fire, just day to day. So the emergency manager in Yuma sent this over to me, and I thought this is a nice kind of overview. Quarantine new livestock, fence out wild animals, vaccinate if you can, have your animal health records, keep things clean fresh water, clean storage. He even mentions a good relationship with the local vet, and then limit outside visitors and manage stocking capacity. So he just threw this kind of in, but animal disease is real, as we've kind of learned with the chickens and the highly pathogenic avian influenza. If we ever do get foot and mouth disease or African swine fever, it's going to be an even bigger deal and even more detrimental to the economy. So having these things kind of at the forefront is really good. So now we'll switch over to livestock, and we'll just look at the specifics to preparing livestock. And again, all hazardous disasters. I think it was almost a decade ago now out east. We had some pretty severe winter storms, some blizzards, and they were delivering hay via, I think it was National Guard helicopter. And I was told that wasn't the best idea at the time. Hopefully we'll have a better plan this time around. We've obviously dealt with floods, 100-year and 500-year floods already in Colorado. They're probably coming back. And then fire is something we deal with every fire season. Now fire season, we really can't say it's a fire season. It's more like a fire year. This bottom picture in the middle is the dairy that had the explosion in Texas. And they had to, they lost 18,000 dairy cattle there. So talking to my counterpart there in Texas, their ag emergency management person, That was really, really difficult. And they had to come up with some really quick plans on where to put 18,000 dairy cattle that were either needed to be depopulated because they were injured so badly or had already expired. So when we're talking about livestock specific emergency preparedness before the disaster, do you know the hazards and risks to your animals in your area? Are they outside or inside? You know, what are the specific injuries that they could get? What are the specific illnesses that they could get for your location? This is very site specific. As I travel around the state of Colorado, the regions of the state are so different. I mean, the San Luis Valley does not look like Julesburg, and Julesburg does not look like Montrose or, you know, Palisade. So we have very different areas and very different risks. Do you have a good inventory? I know the CSU extension folks, they travel around the state and try to remind all the ranchers, farmers, and producers, you know, have a good list of your animals, have good records on them. Identification is super important. You know, as I've learned from our brand inspectors and the brand division here, you know, they're all about ownership and tracking your stuff for you, and trying to find it after the disaster if needed. Have you identified alternative water sources, power sources? We were talking just recently at the farm show with a producer rancher that was talking about, you know, what if my pump goes down for my coffin wells? You know, what's the best backup for that? So we were able to find them some resources and refer them out to that. But, you know, maybe it's not running off the power, maybe it's running off diesel or tractor or something. So have you prepared evacuation kits for your animals? They would be slightly larger and include the meds for animals and feed and issues like that. And then are animals conditioned for loading and unloading? Because if they're not, maybe you can't evacuate them. Maybe you just need to cut the line or cut the fence and let them run and get away from the problem that's coming. So here's that slide. Think about animal escape routes, whether it's higher elevations or just away from the danger. I mean, if we can't get them onto, we can't get them quick enough, or we can't get them on to trailers and trailer them out to other locations. Maybe again, that's the decision made by the ownership is we're just going to cut the fence and we're going to let them run and they're going to stay away from the problem. We saw that with some of the fires last summer. So is there a safe environment for the animals? Are structures stable before, you know, the high winds or the fire and after? Is there good electrical and smart fuel and chemical storage so that there's not risk to the animals? We're going to do a tabletop exercise in Douglas County this year where we look at a magnesium chloride spill and a petroleum spill that impact livestock herds. And we're going to do that with some of our producers and our first responders down in the Douglas County, Teller County, and Eastern County areas there. Have you removed debris and loose materials, things that might take off in floodwaters or take off in the wind, you know? And then the chief mentioned the 100 feet, the fire-wise considerations for wildland. Yeah, the red flag warnings and the fire weather outlooks that we've seen these last 2 weeks with the winds and the low relative humidity have been super alarming. And so we just have to stay ahead of that if we possibly can. Have you made evacuation arrangements, prearranged sites with routes and alternative routes? Have you planned for vehicles and people that can drive a trailer and back a trailer? Again, let's not rely on the government if we don't have to, right? Let's rely on our friends and family, other farmers and ranchers, our veterinarians out there in the field. And then if you do evacuate them, and I always think, you know, if you can evacuate them to a farm or a ranch of a friend or a colleague, you know, or neighbor, that's much better than taking it to the fairgrounds, you know, where the CSU extension and government folks are trying to stay, you know, keep their head above the water with all the animals coming in. And then do you have veterinary care, equipment, feed and water for wherever you're evacuating animals to? That's also a huge consideration. And I know some of these evacuations that we've done in the past for the large wildland fires and even the floods, you know, we end up having quite a few animals at various fairgrounds and feedlots and things like that. Is that the best situation for your animals, or should we have had a better plan? Again, with livestock preparedness, and this is just something we really preach here with the state veterinarian's office, 2 doors down. You know, have a relationship with a trusted veterinarian. Know your animals plan as best you can. We've talked, I think, to death about feed supply, water supply, and meds. Building a network of folks way before the disaster happens is super important. This is a page out of the guide, the Prep for Ag Threat Guide. And you can see it talks about how much water a day and feed a day for various species. You know your animals best, so we'll definitely defer to that. And I've got animal health experts and veterinary students that come in and can advise me on things like that as well. And obviously, when temperatures change, so do some of these requirements. So looking at the time, I think we're still okay for time. So let's just jump into a severe winter storm. I put in there extended family, and that's, you know, your animals, but let's think about your human family and then your extended family. We've seen some pretty great storms here in Colorado over the last decade or two. So I think it's worth chatting about. I'm not a meteorologist. I don't work for the National Weather Service, but I'm very lucky that the National Weather Service, both the Boulder office that covers Denver and the Pueblo office that covers the south part of the state, and then Goodland, Kansas, which covers the far east part of the state. They all have emergency management type professionals in the National Weather Service offices here in the region. And they have a hotline that emergency managers can call and get really specific information on weather that's coming in, and especially these watches, advisories, and warnings that are out there. If you don't know the definitions of these things, they're all pretty much the same. You know, the watches or conditions are favorable, or you have ingredients for something bad to happen. And then if they start talking about a warning, that it's here, somebody's seen it, or it's just about to happen. So I don't know if you've seen the cupcake analogy, but a watch is, we've got all the ingredients, sugar, flour, etc., to bake cupcakes. And then the warning is, we got cupcakes, they've been baked. So just have that in the back of your head when you start hearing these various issues, watches, warnings, and advisories from the Weather Service. One of the things that we saw here in Broomfield today, and that happens up in Will County and Larimer County quite a bit, are the new snow squall warnings. So if something's going to come in and be almost like a whiteout condition blizzard, but it's a short-lived burst with heavy snow and high winds, that we'll see a lot of that now here in Colorado. Wind chill warnings and watches, freeze watches, warnings, and frost advisories. Wind chill becomes a warning when it's -35 at high altitude and -25 at normal. So again, various definitions that the National Weather Service has posted on their webpage. I literally just cut this right out. From some of our ag friends over in Yuma County, looking at wind speed and actual thermometer readings. And I think we all know how wind chill feels. When we get into these super cold nights, you know, -30, -40, exposed skin with no fabric over it, 5 to 10 minutes, you have frostbite. So definitely take precautions if you know the cold's coming. These cyclone bombs and everything else, the really scary names for super cold weather. And then here was also one of the percentage increase in feed intake. And I believe that was for his sheep, is what he put in there. So in this all hazards preparedness for rural communities guide that we're using, the winter storm section was based on input from North Dakota and Wisconsin, and we know how nasty it can get up there. So they always talk about, you know, consider the road closures, and we did see that a couple of years ago with Logan County, Yuma County, and Sedgwick County. People couldn't get to their animals for at least a week to get them fed, so we were having to plow roads just to get folks out so they could do feeding and watering. And we were having ag trucks and farmers and ranchers get passes to get past some of the checkpoints that the state troopers had, because we have to care for our agriculture, right? So road closures are going to be a big deal. Freezing water supplies, power outages, all that's going to come with these severe winter storms. Do we have a fuel plan? Are roofs able to hold? And is that your house? Is that your barn? Is that some type of structure that you have for your animals? Can you move animals before the storm? Is that realistic? And again, the right food, the right water, shelter and cover. One of the things that one of the local ranchers said to me is, we always think about bedding, even if it's our livestock out there, and sand for footing. And then on the animal health side, do you know what it looks like when your animals have frostbite, when they're dehydrated, frozen in chapped parts, or hypothermia? Again, this is the guidance on the left here, the All Hazards Preparedness for Rural Communities. You can download that from the Iowa State webpage. It's at that www.prepforagthreats.org. Another good one that's kind of a workbook with a bunch of checklists is Ready Ag, Disaster and Defense Preparedness for Production Agriculture. That's put out by the Penn State, Pennsylvania State University, Penn State Extension folks. Our CSU Extension folks use that quite a bit when they're talking to the backyard producers. And then they also, CSU Extension has some really good recovery materials. In fact, their recovery after the fire books that they put out, they're very specific to each county, but they actually sent one over to Oahu and helped out the folks in Hawaii with some of their agriculture needs after their big fire. And that's what I have today, and I'm happy to answer any questions or try to go find any answers for anybody.
Feel free to put any questions that you might have in the chat or the Q&A function. We'll be happy to ask those today, and we'll wait just a few minutes for those. While we're waiting for any of you that are adding those to the chat, a quick question I had for you, Dan, is how often do you suggest that some of our members update these plans each year?
You know, I think at least annually is probably a good number. You know, probably something, look at it every year, review it, make sure you share it with whoever you care about, whether that's family or employees.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
It just seems like things change so quickly, at least in my life, they do.
Absolutely. A quick question from Eric is, can you go back to where to find the literature that you described today?
So the webpage for this is prepforagthreats.org, and it's the All Hazards Preparedness for Rural Communities guidebook. You want me to type that into the chat, or?
If you want to put it in the chat, you're more than welcome to. I believe I also put it in the chat for all the attendees as well. And we'll send out some of these links for you all that are in attendance today. We'll send them out via email to you so you can find those.
Yeah, we like this material. It is a little bit basic, but it's nice to review. It handles a lot of different types of disasters, like I mentioned, all hazards. And now that it's translated into Spanish, it's really good if you have some workers that need that. So
Great. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or Q&A. So I think we're good. Thank you so much, Dan.
thank you.
Pass it off to you, Zach.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you as always, being such an asset to the association and the industry. And again, thank you to Chief Russ Kane for your contributions to your environment and your society and the industry as well. If anyone has any additional questions or comments for us, we are always open to suggestion. We are always trying to build a more robust program here as part of our offerings to you all and your staff and your community members. Please pass the word if anybody has any questions about safety or workers' comp. If you've got more than one employee on your operation, you should really consider carrying workers' compensation. Thank you again to our CLA Safety Group, Pinnacle Insurance, Flood Pete Insurance, Hub International, and the Renaissance Insurance Group. We really appreciate you all being on here and making this possible for what we do here at CLA. We had a really great year last year and hope to have another good year this year. So, Brittany, unless I'm missing something else, I think that is it. And we will give you back the rest of your afternoon.
Absolutely. We're good to go. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.